Okay, so we are going to get started, everyone. Of course, as have been all these classes, and particularly today, with much good news, but also some bad news. So we definitely want to have our thoughts and our prayers in this class to be with the wounded, with the hostages, with all our soldiers who are fighting, Le'ilui Nishmat, the soldiers who were killed in the last few days. So many things to pray for. Um, and just keep all those things in mind. Okay, and we are going to a place that is actually very appropriate for prayer, and that is the desert. Okay, so in our fourth class of nature, we are finally getting to what's kind of the elephant in the room of Eretz Yisrael, and that is desert, right? Desert has an outsized place in our, not only in our geography, but in our culture, in our historical memory. Desert is so important. Sometimes I take people out to, the Judean desert, and on the way I say, okay, so who in Jewish history lived in the desert? And I get, Avram and Sarah and Yitzchak and Moshe and Eliyahu, and eventually we come to the conclusion that pretty much everyone at some point lived in the desert, because it really is so much a part of our identity. So if you remember back to the second class where we did water, we talked about how rain and water are so significant in Eretz Israel because they are so rare. Okay? The desert is a little bit the inverse of that, right? It's so significant because we have it so ever present. So this class is really going to be a combination. It's a little different than what I've been doing till now. We are going to do some natural history, talk about climate and about animals and plants and things like that. But we're also going to spend a good amount of time on Tanakh and Jewish history, and talk about the significance of the desert in the formation of Am Yisrael. And as I put it in the title here, desolation or refuge, right? Is the desert a good place or a bad place? Or something in the middle, right? Also possible. Okay, so let's get started. This image that you have here, we're going to have a lot of beautiful pictures of desert. Those of us who are desert fans, I'm more a green fan, but I can see the appeal. But you have many beautiful pictures. This is a picture of Nachal Tzin, okay, down in south of Beersheba, right near Ein Ovdat. This is where this is the view from David Ben Gurion and Paula Ben Gurion's grave, right? They have a very nice view, looking out at Nachal Tzin. Okay, so one of the things, and I actually was going to look this up, I was rather pressed for time today. We all say that Eskimos have many words for snow. I don't know if that's really true, but if someone wants to find that out, you can. But it is true that Hebrew has many words for desert. Okay, the word that is probably the most common one that we're all familiar with, that we're going to talk quite a bit about, is midbar. Okay, which doesn't really translate as desert. Okay, it could be wilderness. We'll get to a little bit of a definition of what is midbar, but we also have a lot of other nouns that are used in similar ways. So I brought you here two psukim, two verses, one from Yeshayahu, from Isaiah, one from Yirmiyahu, from Jeremiah, that have many synonyms for desert. Okay, so take a look at the first one. Yisusum midbar vitzia. Okay, I bolded the desert words. Midbar vitzia v'tagel arava v'tifrach kachavatzelet. Okay, don't even, like, the translation is only so that you get the gist, but really it's very difficult to translate, because the question is, do these words all mean the same thing, right? The arid desert shall be glad, the wilderness shall rejoice and blossom like a rose. What is midbar? What is tzia? What is arava? If we go to Yirmiyahu, we have even more words, right? Below amru ayeh Adonai hama'aleh otanu me'eretz Mitzrayim hamolich otanu bamidbar בארץ ערבה ושרוחה, בארץ צייה וצלמוות, בארץ לא עבר בה איש, V'lo yashav Adam sham. Right? They never asked themselves, where is God who brought us up from the land of Egypt, who led us through the wilderness, a land of deserts and pits, drought and darkness, a land nobody has traversed. Okay, so we have many, many words here. So let's just understand a few of them. We have midbar, we have tzia, we have shmama, okay, which we don't have in these verses, but we do have in other places. We also have Yishimon, which is not in these verses, but is in other places. Arava, Sayon, okay? And some people even suggest that the word Sion, right, what we call Jerusalem, Sion, comes from the same root, Siyah, dryness, okay, or heat, because Jerusalem is on the edge of the desert. So what do these words mean? Do they mean the same thing? Do they mean different things? That's a very fraught question. I will bring you the commentary of, actually very interesting, right? The Malbim, a more kind of an early modern European commentator, but he was very interested in synonyms, and he defined these words differently. Is he correct? That's an interesting question, but at least he took on the challenge, right? So he looks at Yeshayahu, right? And he says, Midbar is a place that is not good for any kind of planting. And we're going to see Midbar is really the opposite of the settled land. It's a place where you really can't grow anything. Tzia, Tzia is a place that is very hot, right? Hot and dry. So the land, the earth might actually be good, be quality earth, but there's too much sun, too hot, you can't grow things. The Arava is different altogether than either of these. The earth is good, the climate is fine, but many, many thorns and thistles grow there. And then he actually goes into a very interesting metaphor, right? Mashal and a nimshal, and he says that Am Yisrael is like the Arava. We have the potential to be very good, but we're full of thorns and thistles. We're full of all of these bad deeds, and if we can cleanse ourselves from those things, then we can have the potential to tifrach kachavatzela, to blossom like a rose. The Malbim also looks at Yirmiyahu, right? And he says the same thing. Midbar, nothing can grow there. Arava, shucha, right? He says Arava in a different way here in Yirmiyahu. He says those are problems in the land itself. There are a lot of pits. It's uneven. Okay, that's what this translation is relying on. Tzia is too hot. Salmavet is that the air is bad, right? But really, the bottom line is we have many, many synonyms. All of them are negative. Okay? We're going to see that there are some positive attitudes towards the desert, but these are not positive at all, right? And in fact, we could have a very, very simple not even a synonym, but just a description, right? If you remember in Sefer Bamidbar, when we have the rebellion of Korach, right? Korach and his compatriots. So he talks about how Moshe brought them. He didn't bring them to a land of all these good things of Eretz Te'ena v'Gefen v'Rimon, but he kept them in the desert, in Hamakom Hara Hazeh, this bad place. Okay, so very, very negative connotations. The desert is equated not only with a place where nothing can grow, but it's also a place of darkness. And we even have a comparison of the Midbar and Sheol, right? Sheol, the bad place in the next world. Okay, and the greatest example of that is I didn't put this on your source sheets, but I think a lot of us know this from the song in Yeshayahu. Yeshayahu says, "Vayasem midbara ke'eden." Right, God is going to transform, and we'll talk at the end about whether we want the desert transformed. But God is going to transform the midbar into the Garden of Eden. So those two things are compared, contrasted to each other. Now, all of these are Tanakh definitions. What's the definition of the midbar, of the desert in the world? Okay, it means a place that doesn't get a lot of rain. Okay, less than 200 millimeters of rain, which is about 8 inches of rain per year. Okay, what that means is if you want to farm, you have to have some kind of irrigation. Okay? And that's what Israel, of course, is working on solutions like that. But even in ancient times, there was irrigation. But it's not enough rainfall that you can have what's called in Mishnaic terms chaklaut baal, right? Just agriculture that can grow just from the rain that falls from the heavens. Now, by the way, if you're say desert and you say, oh, it's a very hot place, often that's true, but not only, meaning the Antarctica is also considered a desert because it doesn't have any rain, but that's very far afield from our subject today. Okay, now I personally think, oh, sorry, Eskimo is a bad word. Sorry, I'm not PC enough. Yes, Salmavet is darkness, right? Salmavet sel mavet, right? The shadow of death. We think of that very metaphorically. We're going to get to Tehillim chapter 23 a little bit later, but it also can literally mean darkness. Okay, but let's go to the word midbar, because midbar is a fascinating word. Okay, midbar, the root of midbar, okay, is Dalid Vet Resh, the Shoresh. Those of us who learned Shoresh, right, who went to Ulpan, who learned the roots of words, right? The Shoresh is Dalid Vet Resh, which includes many different meanings or words that grow out of it. Okay, so ultimately, what is something that is davar is to bring something from place to place. Okay, a dover is most often used in the context of a shepherd. Okay, the shepherd takes his sheep out to pasture. Okay, that's what you have in Isaiah and Yeshayahu. Ra'u kvasim kidovram, right? Taking them out, and this connects to midbar is a place of pasture. It's a place of mir'eh, because it's where you are madbir your sheep. It's where you take them out, and it's where you take them out to pasture. But taking something from place to place can also mean a leader who takes his people from place to place. Okay, now this is not just a metaphorical idea, which it is. Okay, the great leaders of Am Yisrael were shepherds, and we hear about this in Chazal. Chazal love to talk about this, right? Why do you need to be a shepherd in order to be a leader, right? We have the beautiful midrash about God says, you're taking care. I see how you're taking care of your sheep. Now take care of my sheep, right? But even the word itself means a leader, right? And take a look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin, right? We're just talking about Yoshua, and Yoshua, should he have, helpers in his leadership? Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tol makel v'hach al kod kodam. You go whack those guys, those elders. Davar echad lidor. Shnei davarin lidor. There could only be one leader for a generation and not two. Okay, no rotation government. You can only have one leader. Okay, so a davar is a shepherd, but a davar is a leader, but a davar also is connected to speech, to language, right? Today, all those of us who are checking in on the news every single day, who are we listening to? The dover tal, okay? The IDF spokesman. Somebody who is a dover is a spokesman. A dibra or dibur is speech. How does a leader lead? He leads through speech. How does God lead us? Through the 10 dibrot, right? We are given that speech. And if you want to take it one last step further, when we talk about the Beit HaMikdash, what is the inner sanctum of the Beit HaMikdash? It's a dvir, right? I see Ruth got it, right? It's a dvir. A dvir is the place where you gather, you bring all your sheep into your inner sanctum, where God, Kivyachol, brings all of his sheep into the inner sanctum. So midbar is really a fascinating word that encapsulates within it all of these ideas, and also gives us a little bit of a sense of midbar is not wholly a negative place. There are positive things about midbar as well. It can be a place to raise up leadership, whether it's a leadership of a flock or a leadership of a human flock. And we have so many metaphors in the Nevi'im for this idea. Yirmiyahu talks about it, right? David HaMelech and the Midrash talks about, how he takes care of each one of his sheep, makes sure that the weak ones are watched out for, right? All these beautiful metaphors, but it all goes back ultimately to language. Okay. I don't usually look at the chat, but I feel tempted to do so. Oh, Sorshi, thank you for putting it again, Susanna. Okay, good. Let's continue. Okay, deserts. deserts, we're going to talk quite a bit about the Judean desert because historically it's actually the most interesting. It's the one that has the most connection to Jewish history, to human history in general, but it's not the only desert in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, we have different kinds of deserts. There is the Negev desert and the Sinai desert. The picture on the left here is Mitzpe Ramon, right? Is Machtesh Ramon, is the Ramon crater with this handsome little ibex over here, this Yael. Okay. The Negev desert, the Sinai desert are part of the what's called the subtropical ridge, or this belt of deserts that kind of goes throughout the world. Okay. And while they're not sandy deserts, they're rocky deserts, but they are similar to deserts in other places. Okay? The Judean desert is a different kind of desert. We're going to discuss what that is in just a moment. There are other similar phenomena to the Judean desert, but it's not a desert like the Negev or the Sinai. And the reason I brought you this particular picture here on the right is it's actually a great, whoever, Susan, please stop playing with your annotating. I don't know how you're doing that, but don't do it. Okay. Um, and what you can see in this picture, it's actually a really cool picture from a drone, I assume, is that you are seeing Jerusalem, right? You're seeing the old city, you're seeing Har HaBayit, you're looking out towards the east, towards Har HaZeitim. We're going to talk about the proximity of Har HaZeitim to the desert very soon, and out to the Judean desert. The Judean desert is very close to the civilized world, and that's what's so significant about it in terms of human history. Okay, but this is a great picture that really gives you that sense of how close it is, because we feel like here in Jerusalem, oh, it's green, we have parks, it's so nice, but it's actually very, very close to the desert. Okay, what is with the annotating, people? Stop with the annotating. Okay. Okay, moving right along. So what is the Judean desert and what makes it special? Okay, so here's where we get to my very, very little knowledge in meteorology, but enjoy it while you got it. Okay, the Judean desert is called a midbar tzel geshem, or a rain shadow desert. Okay, what that means is like this: moist air comes in from the west, from the sea. Okay, from the Mediterranean in our case. Okay, that moist air floats along all nice and breezy until it gets to mountains. Okay, we are in the Judean. Oh, sorry, we are in the Judean hills. Okay, and then that moist air, those clouds climb up the mountains, and what happens is as they get higher, the air gets colder, they condense, and the rain comes out from the clouds, and you get a lot of nice rain there in the Judean hills, let's say in Jerusalem for argument's sake. Once it gets to the top, to what we call the watershed, okay, then it starts to descend. As it descends on the other side, it starts to get warmer. And so the condensation stops. All the liquid that's left is now inside the clouds, okay, and doesn't come down in the desert. Okay, but what will happen ultimately, so you'll have a nice amount of rain here in the mountains. A lot of that rain is going to be gotten rid of. Once you come down on the other side, on the eastern side, there's very, very little rain for that rest of the desert. Okay, but there's still some water left in the clouds as they keep on going, blowing eastward. Eventually, in the land of Israel at least, they will cross the Jordan River, they will reach the plains of the Jordan, and then they will go up into the very, very high mountains of Jordan, where they will again condense and let out more rain. And that's why the western side of Jordan, of the country of Jordan, is actually very fertile. Okay, the Jordan Valley gets a lot of rain. Once you pass those mountains, you have the watershed of Jordan, and you get to the eastern side, completely arid. There's no more rain left. There's nothing. Okay, I hope that made sense. You can see the image on the right here can show you how you have the mountains, right? And then crashes down into the plains, what's called Arvot Yericho, the plains that are down by the Jordan River and down by the Dead Sea. Okay, so that's the Judean desert. The Judean desert is special in that it gets some rain, but very little rain. and in that it is so close to the civilized land. Okay, we're going to come back to the close to the civilized land very soon, but right now we want to talk about water. Okay, so let's say I'm in the desert. Where's my water coming from? I'm not getting enough water because I don't have enough rain. So one of the tried and true methods throughout history of getting water in the desert is from flash floods. This works very nicely in the Judean. Well, not very nicely. It's actually very dangerous, but it's very important. Okay, it works in the Judean desert. It works in the eastern and the central Negev, not so much in the western Negev because you don't have the height differences. But basically, what happens is when it rains up in the mountains, let's say in Jerusalem, all that rain has got to drain down to the lowest point. Okay, the lowest point being, of course, the Jordan Valley, the Dead Sea. Okay, so it can be a beautiful sunny day out near Ein Gedi or Yericho or Qumran. Okay, but if it's raining in Jerusalem within a half hour, tons and tons of water is going to come crashing down into the desert. This is actually very, very dangerous. That's why we don't go hiking in canyons when there's a forecast of rain in the mountains, even if it's a nice sunny day. But if you are clever, and throughout history, people have been very clever, you can understand how to channel that water into your aqueducts, into your cisterns. Okay, so what you have here as pictures, you have a astonishing, fabulous flash flood. This is also in Nachal Tzin, okay, what I was showing you before. People actually go out, by the way. They are hunters of flash floods, and they go out. They find a safe place to stand on top because you really have to be very, very careful. But to see this, the power of it, I've only seen it in videos. I haven't seen it in real life. It's phenomenal. Okay, now if you have smart engineers who understand how to trap that water, you make aqueducts to trap that water. And this was done by everybody from Herod. Okay, and in the middle picture here, you have some of the aqueducts that are left, very little that's been left, but a little bit that's been left from Masada. Okay, where he would basically trap all that water at Masada. The Nabateans figured it out. Byzantine monks, we'll see in a little bit, also figured it out. So if you're able to do that and to get your water in aqueducts and into cisterns, you can have water for the whole summer from the winter, right? So that's a one way of utilizing these flash floods. You also have something that's much more natural, less technological, less sophisticated, but certainly very important. And that's what you see in the picture on the right here. This is what's called a give. A give is basically it's a natural cistern, right? It's an indentation in a canyon that fills with water, okay, in the rainy season. Because it's in a canyon, because it's relatively shaded and protected, it can last through the winter. Okay, by the end of the winter, it might be a little bit like scummy and gross, but you'll still have some water. Okay, and this was very, very important for travelers, for nomads, for shepherds, right? It's not something that's done by humans, it's something that's done by topography, but it was very, very important to know where those givim were, those watering holes, so that you could take advantage of them. Right? Now, this is what you do if you don't have a water source. Oh, we'll come to that in 1 second. But just one other thing, okay? We have that beautiful phrase, right, in the Shir Amalot that we're going to come back to the land, ka'afikim banegev, right, as streams in the Negev. Okay? Streams that are coming, rivulets that are coming and joining in all different ways. Sometimes you have this huge flash flood. You have that huge aliyah from the former Soviet Union, right? But sometimes you have rivulets. You have little groups of people that come from France or from England or from the United States. And those little rivulets join to one larger, to all the tributaries join together. And those are the afikim banegev. Right? Now, what you see here is, well, two things. First of all, the picture on the left, okay, you can see very clearly the line of the stream, of the afik, of the wadi, okay? Where the rain flows, that's where it becomes green. And you can see this all over the place in the winter if you travel through the desert, okay? Because it's only going to get green in the places where the water has flowed. So you have that line very, very nicely. The other thing is this beautiful picture of flowers here on the right. We're going to talk about desert plants in a minute, but one of the things that's amazing about the desert, and it's not only in Israel, it's all over, is that it can come to life at night, right? You get beautiful amount of rain, and suddenly everything flowers, right? Somebody is not muted. Please mute yourself. Thank you. Okay. It comes to life overnight. One of the characteristics of many desert plants is that the seeds only kind of open up when there's a major rainfall, but then it happens very, very fast. And often, a lot of these plants also have very deep roots to reach water so that they can survive even in the more lean years. Now, if you are fortunate enough, you will have a spring, right? You will actually have a desert oasis. And there are springs like this throughout, also in the Negev, also in the Sinai, also in the Judean desert. And because they are so valuable, people have always lived near them. Okay, they've always had a reason to, this is a good reason to make a habitation. So the picture on the left here is from Nachal Arugot, one of the springs by Engedi. By Engedi, we know that there is civilization that goes back to Chalcolithic times, right? 6,000 years ago, because this is a place that's viable for life. Okay, on the left here, you have on the right, excuse me, you have one of the springs that actually the source waters of Wadi Kelt, okay, Ain Prat. There's a beautiful, beautiful nature reserve in not far from Ma'ale Adumim. Ain Prat, and also people lived here. Now, Ain Prat is actually at the foot of the modern community of Anatot, which is very close to the ancient community of Anatot. Who comes from Anatot? Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah. Jeremiah is very much a man of the desert. He clearly knows the desert. He's a shepherd. He understands the scarcity of water. And one of the things he says, it's very powerful, and you can clearly understand him based on the fact that he saw this incredible water source. He says, Bnei Israel, what's the matter with you? Why would you leave the Mayim Chayim, the living waters of the spring, lachsov lachem be'erot nishbarim, right? To make yourselves broken cisterns, broken wells. Why would you leave these living waters? And of course, the metaphor is, why would you, God, Borot, thank you, you are correct. So why would you leave the living waters of God in order to go to these broken cisterns, to go to this idolatry? Okay, so that imagery, Yirmiyahu's imagery is all over. We talked about Noga Ruveni last time. Noga Ruveni wrote a very seminal book about Yirmiyahu and the imagery that he uses, and he's always going back to the desert, to the shepherds, to the water, right? That habitat that he is so familiar with. Okay, one of the things that's fascinating in the Judean desert is a phenomenon that is called Sfar Hamidbar, which I have never found a good English translation for. People say frontier, they say the edge of the desert. None of them really work. Okay, basically, what Sfar Hamidbar means is this area that is kind of between the settled land, the land that gets a lot of rainfall, and the real desert that is very, very, very arid. Okay, you can see it nicely on the map here. All of these places like Anatot, like Herodian and Tekoa, okay, going down towards the area of Masada, right? This is on the edge of the desert. It gets some rain, not a lot of rain, but it gets some rain. And it is a place that is in between the two, right? The picture on the left here is a view in Herodian. If you go to Herodian, this picture doesn't do it justice, but you really have an amazing 360-degree view. You can see Jerusalem on one side and the green of Jerusalem. You could see to the Dead Sea, Judean desert, to the Dead Sea on the other side. Herodian is in the middle. The Sfar, okay, the edge of the desert, is very important for a number of reasons. First of all, it gets some rain. It gets more rain than the very, the deep desert, but it doesn't get as much rain as the hills. So what that means is it's a place where you can have some agriculture, You're able to do some growing of things, often, by the way, not wheat, but barley, because barley needs less rain. Okay. You can't have agriculture like you could have in the hills or on the coast, but you can have some agriculture. But you're also going to have sheep, goats, right? Shepherding, because you have a lot of mir'eh. You have a lot of this kind of empty land that doesn't belong to everybody, that's perfect for bringing your flocks to. Okay, so you have this kind of a in between stage. Okay, the edge of the desert is also very significant in terms of security. Right? If we think of the settled land is contrasted to the desert, what that means is civilization, right? Where people live, farms, cities, communities, are in that western area or in that more settled area, that more rainfall area. In the desert area, you have the nomads, and the nomads will always have the fear that there's going to be an incursion by nomads or by foreign powers who are going to take advantage of that relatively empty area to come and attack your settled land. So the Sfar, the edge of the desert, is very important in terms of security. In times of a strong central government, you will protect that area. So, for example, Herod is a great example, right? Herod, 2,000 years ago, very strong central government, and he builds palace slash fortresses all along this area, including Herodian, including near Jericho, including down towards Masada, right, to protect his settled land. The Mishnah, the Tosefta talk about what if you live in this area, right? And it gives special rules for people who live in this area. First of all, if you live in a community in the Sfar Hamidbar, you are obligated to participate in building a wall around that community because this is a dangerous place. Okay. If you live in the Sfar Hamidbar, normally you are obligated to chain up your dog. It's very dangerous to leave a dog on the loose. But if you live in Sfar Hamidbar, you are allowed to let your dog run free because you need protection, right? So in the time of the Mishnah, they're also very aware that this is an area that can be rather dangerous. It's near border areas, it's near marauders, it's a dangerous place. Okay, let's do a little natural history, just a little. Plants and animals of the desert. Okay, so both of them need to conserve energy, conserve water, try to lose as much heat as possible. And so they've adapted to the very harsh conditions of the desert in order to be able to do those things. So plants, for example, we talked about how plants wait for the rainfall, how they have very deep roots. Sometimes they have thick leaves so that there's less evaporation. You have a great desert plant example here on the left. This is called a maluach, or a salt bush, because if you take the leaf and you eat it, which you can, it is salty, right? You could even fry it up and it tastes a little bit like potato chips. Okay? There are 13 varieties of maluach in the land of Israel. Again, an example of how much desert we've got. It actually takes the salt from the earth, absorbs it, and it comes out on the leaves. This is a plant that is very common in the desert. And because of that, two things happened. First of all, this was a poor people's food, right? If you couldn't have anything else, you'll find a maluach, you can munch on that. Okay, so it's poor people's food. People are learning the Daf Yomi. About 2 weeks ago, we had a story about King Yanai Hamelech, who made a banquet, and he said, our forefathers, our ancestors, when they were building the Beit HaMikdash, they didn't have fancy food, they had humble food. Achlu miluchim bamidbar. Okay, they ate salty things in the desert. This is what they're talking about. These are the salty things. So these are poor people, humble food. Okay. The other thing, because it's so prevalent, is that among the Arabs, there are all kinds of folk beliefs, some of which medical science is proving to be true, about how this bush is good for remedies for certain things, diabetes, heart disease. Okay? If you soak in a bath with these salt leaves, it's supposed to be good for your joints. So all kinds of interesting plant-based medicine, which I'm sure you could take with a grain of salt. Get it? Salt? Haha. Okay. Moving along to animals. Okay, animals, same thing. You have to conserve your energy. So a lot of desert animals are smaller varieties of other animals. They pee less, they poop less, they can manage with less water. They get out early or late, but they're never out in the heat of the day, right? If you go hiking in the desert in the heat of the day, you are much dumber than the animals. And in terms of like getting rid of heat, they are often light colored, right? Not black, because black is going to absorb the heat, white is going to deflect the heat. And they have this large surface area of their ears, right? So more of the heat will come off of them. So this is a fennec, or Shual Hamidbar, a desert fox. And he's a great example of a lot of these different things, right? Okay, we're going to move into more kind of, first of all, we're going to be talking now about the Judean desert for the next little while, and a little more about the spiritual elements or the historical elements of the desert. Okay, so this is a little bit of a provocative question, right? Could the temple be built in Tel Aviv? Right? The obvious answer is no. Okay, but not for the reasons that you're thinking of. Yes, for the reasons of the holiness of Jerusalem and the holiness of Mount Moriah. Yes, but there's also an idea that the temple needs to have proximity to the desert. This is the idea of Rav Yoel Elitzur. We're going to talk in a minute about the Seir LaAzazel. Okay, there needs to be a connection between the temple and the desert. Those two things you need to have the contrast of the desert and the settled land. You need to have the deep meanings and the values of the desert that we're going to get to a little later in this class. Okay? And it also means that we need to have the memory of our time together in the desert. Okay? Now, the central ritual that connects the Mikdash to the desert is the Seir LaAzazel. Right? Now, if you remember Yom Kippur, we have the lottery. We have the two goats. Okay, one goat gets sacrificed in the Beit Hamikdash. The other goat gets sent out on Yom Kippur. He's taken out by what's called an ish iti, a man of the times. Right, he's taken out over the Mount of Olives and out to the desert where he is thrown off a cliff. He is symbolically carrying the weight of our sins. Okay, there's great descriptions of this in Masachet Yoma, but it also comes, of course, from the Torah. It comes from Sefer Vayikra. And here we have a picture. I don't know if someone's trying to ask a question or just needs to be muted. Mute you. Okay. So we're not going to go through the whole description in Masachet Yoma, but it's just interesting to conjecture where is this Azazel? Where are we supposed to go? Okay, so the description that we have in Masachet Yoma is that the Seir LaAzazel is sent out. There was a ramp, Kevesh Asulo Bipnei HaBavliim, that the Babylonian Jews would take this very literally, and they would like throw things at the goat and pull at him and say, take our sins and get out of here. So they built a ramp so that he wouldn't be harassed. Okay. Where did this ramp go? Over the Kidron Valley, meaning from Mount Moriah, from Har Habayit, from the Temple Mount, out to Har Hazeitim, to the Mount of Olives, and then over and out. Okay. Is this ramp existing today? So far, we have not found such a thing. Archaeologists have not found such a thing, but it's not such a crazy thing because it would have eroded. It's on the side of a mountain. In any case, nothing has been found. And then it talks about he was taken out. There are two versions. One says 10 meal, one says 12 meal. A meal is, we think, is a Roman mile. The picture here on the right is of my son a few years ago hugging the Roman milestone that we have on the path of the patriarchs in Gush Etzion. Okay, Romans love to put up milestones to say you are X number of miles to the nearest big city. But the Mishnah talks about taking him out 10 Roman miles to the desert. Where is that? Okay, so we have a few possibilities. And the truth is that the same Rabbi Yoel Elitzur, who talks about how we have to be near the desert, also says it doesn't have to be one place. It doesn't have to be a specific place. It could be a number of different places. So as long as it's in the desert, the most popular suggestion is what's called Al Muntar or Jebel Muntar, or Har Azazel. Okay, and we'll talk about that place in a minute. But that's more or less due east of Jerusalem, due east of Har Hazeitim. It fits this distance very nicely. Okay, but the other choice is out near Tekoa, out near Haritun, east, but also south of Har Habayit. Why this suggestion? We'll get to in a minute, but I just wanted you to see the two possibilities. Okay, Jebel Muntar or Har Azazel, which is what most people think today, but there's also the suggestion of Tekoa, of the area near the Haritun caves. All right. Why each of these places? So the Muntar is, like we said, geographically works very nicely. But the other thing that makes it very appropriate is the Mishnah talks about how the goat was pushed down the mountain and he didn't get to the bottom before he was completely broken up. His bones were all broken by the stones along the way. Har Azazel, Jebel Muntar is a very jagged cliff. You do not want to fall down this mountain. Okay, so that fits very, very well with what we were talking about here. But on the other hand, if you go out to the Tekoa, Wadi Tekoa, Nahal Tekoa, which is this deep riverbed that goes all the way out to the Dead Sea, you will reach an amazing cave called the Haritun Cave. And the monks who used to live in the Haritun Cave called it Tsuka, right? Tsuka, Mishnah talks about taking the goat to a place called Tsuk. Okay, so we have that linguistic connection. Either way, it has to be the desert. The temple has to be connected to the desert. Jerusalem has to be connected to the desert. Okay, we're going to talk about the Judean desert as refuge, and we're going to go quickly through a number of stories. Okay, the Judean desert is an ideal place to get away. Okay, whether you're getting away from civilization, you're getting away from your enemies, you're getting away from some trouble that you got into. Why is it so ideal? Because it's very close, but it's very far at the same time. Okay, what does that mean? That means, as we saw, that it's right on the edge of the settled land, right near Jerusalem. Okay. On the other hand, it's not so easy to get there. Okay. Certainly in ancient times, when you go today and you drive on Route 90 that's taking you down towards Gedi, towards Masada, okay, you will come up on cliffs that are on the side of the road. Okay. This is called the He'etikim cliffs. And in ancient times, when the Dead Sea was larger, was wider, the Dead Sea reached all the way to the edge of these cliffs. So what that meant is if you got out towards the area of Qumran or so, and you wanted to go further south, you had to get in a boat. Or else climb over cliffs. So it is, to a great extent, it's accessible, but it's also inaccessible, right? So we hear about King David before he's a king, on the run from King Saul. He, in general, likes to go to the desert. We hear about King David. He goes to Midbar Ziph, to the Ziph Desert, right? He goes to various places that are kind of away from civilization. Where is the one of the most powerful stories is the desert by En Gedi. Now, why is En Gedi a good place? Well, first of all, King David is not by himself. Okay, he's with a whole bunch of followers of men, okay? And they need water. They need water. They need food. And Gedi is, as we saw before, a natural oasis. So he goes out there. King Saul hears about this, comes after him, and of course we have the famous story where David and his men are hiding in the back of the cave. Saul comes in to use the facilities, doesn't know that David is there. David's men tell him, go ahead, kill him. David says, I can't do that, but he does cut off his robe. And then he actually comes out and confronts him, and they have some form of reconciliation here in Engedi. Now, today, the Nature Reserve of Engedi has taken this rather seriously, and they've named things after David. So you have Nachal David, right? The Wadi David, the David riverbed, but you also have this nice waterfall called Mapal David, the David waterfall. Right? And it's also nice to imagine that David survives, grows into his old age as a king, and maybe he tells his son Solomon about his glory days when he was younger, because Solomon is also very connected connected to En Gedi, right? Dili Vikarme En Gedi, my beloved is mine in the vineyards of En Gedi, right? So is there some kind of a connection there? Okay, our next refugees are the people of Qumran. Okay, they are not getting away from an enemy. They are getting away, well, they're getting away from a perceived enemy, but they're not on the run from any physical danger. They are on the run from civilization. They don't want to be in what they see as corrupt Jerusalem, the corrupt temple, right? The people of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which most scholars identify with the people of Qumran, which most scholars identify with the Essenes. This is a sect, a group in Second Temple times, from second century before the Common Era until the destruction of the temple in the first century of the Common Era. I'm sure most of you know the story, so we'll just go through it quickly. But they see the priests and the temple and civilization as a whole as very corrupt. And so they go out to the desert, right? Now, again, they don't go so far. And this is also a good way for us to see this, the Het Tekim cliffs. So here's Qumran. Once you get south of Qumran, you have these cliffs that go almost up to the road, okay? And in ancient times, the Dead Sea came up to those cliffs and it was very hard to pass there, okay? So Qumran is where the caves, which have the Dead Sea Scrolls in them, the whole scrolls, and also the many, many, many fragments of scrolls that were first discovered in the end of 1947 by a Bedouin shepherd, and eventually more and more and more and more of them were discovered. Okay? But these are either brought down here or written down here by these guys who are trying to get away from their people, but people that they see as very, very misguided in Jerusalem. Okay, another refugee group a little bit later than Qumran, although eventually refugees from Qumran do make their way to there, are the people of Masada. Okay, Masada is built as a refuge first by Hasmonean kings, then it's used as a refuge by the guy who's always wanting to run away from someone, and that's Herod. Okay, and ultimately it's taken over by the Jewish zealots in the Great Revolt, right, who use it as their last stand, their place of their last stand against the Romans. Masada is a wonderful place for a refuge. As you can see, it's cut off from everything on either side, and you have all this nice space on top to build everything you need, and you can launch attacks on anyone trying to access the mountain. But it's also a good refugee place because it's in the desert. Okay, and we know that Masada was not only a place for the zealots, but many others came to join them, refugees, when their communities were destroyed by the Romans in Qumran and En Gedi. Eventually, almost 1,000 people on Masada when Masada falls in the year 73 to the Romans. And we found, of course, we all know the amazing story of the archaeology on Masada and how much stuff was discovered there from the people who lived there, the Geniza that was found there with the scrolls that were there, and the lots that tell us the story, we think, that corroborate the story that Josephus tells us of the mass suicide, and of course, one of the earlier synagogues that we have in the land of Israel, and all of this on Masada, but perfect as a place of refuge. Our second to last refugees, our last Jewish refugees that we're going to talk about, are the followers of Bar Kokhba. Okay? Bar Kokhba revolt in the 130s of the Common Era. Bar Kokhba revolt doesn't really take place in the desert. Okay, we have Bar Kokhba builds hideout caves. His men build hideout caves all over the lowlands, the Shvela, okay, in the areas north of Jerusalem, even in the Galilee, okay. They build these hideout caves so they can conduct their guerrilla warfare. But in the last 50, 60 years, we've been finding more and more caves in the desert, but they're not, as far as we understand, caves for the fighters exclusively. And to understand this, we have to understand something that is special about the Judean desert. Judean desert, like we said, is close to settled land. And that's why you have what we'll call local deserts, right? You have Midbar Zif, you have Midbar Tekoa, you have places that are settled land, and then adjacent to it, you have desert. And what the research that's been being done into these Bar Kokhba caves in the last few decades is discovering is that when people were at their wits' end after they tried to fight the Romans and they were defeated, right, before the Romans would invade their towns and kill all of them, they would escape through the nearest riverbed, the nearest Nahal, Wadi, out to their desert, right? That riverbed would take them out towards the desert. So they would go through Nahal Tekoa or they would go through Nahal Arugot, right? You would go out and then find a cave in the desert to wait out the worst of this revolt. Unfortunately, most of the people who went to wait it out never were able to come home again. And some of the things we've discovered in these caves really show us that. I think the most poignant thing that was ever discovered there are these keys. That's what you see here on the left. These are keys to people's houses that they took with them to the cave because they thought they were going to go home and they never were able to go home. Now, these caves started to be discovered in 1960 in an amazing, amazing archaeological mission that was done jointly by archaeologists and the Israeli army to reach these very, very, very inaccessible places. Yigael Yadin was lucky enough to get the caves that had remnants from the Bar Kokhba fighters and civilians, including letters from Bar Kokhba, right? The first actual letters that we have from this commander, Shimon Bar Koziba. But among the other things they found, what did they bring with them? So you have actually people's dishes. This dish on the right here, this was not bought in Costco. Okay, this is a dish that was found.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right? You look at it, first of all, it wasn't broken. It was whole. It was wrapped very, 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 very well. Yigael Yadin in his book writes about, some Jewish housewife who was so good at wrapping up her stuff. Okay. It was found intact, a glass dish, amazing, right?
We don't
We
see
found
it.
textiles.
Shulie, we don't see the picture.
It looks perfect, right?
No, Shulie, we don't see the pictures.
You don't see the picture? Does anybody else not
We
see the
do
picture?
see
I
it.
see.
We see the
Maybe,
pictures. We see the
Marilyn, maybe
pictures.
there's a problem with your computer. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Um,
I'm sorry.
maybe log off and log on again.
Okay.
The picture on the left here is a swatch of fabric, okay, which is amazing that this was preserved, but it's because of the dry desert climate. Okay. But what's special about the fabric is that it's colored. Okay. Things that are dyed are only for rich people. And it tells you that the refugees in the Bar Kokhba time are not necessarily poor. They're not necessarily these guys who are homeless, but rather they're people who are driven out of their homes because of the terrible circumstances that they were suffering. Okay. Finally, our last refugees are monks. Okay, the monastic movement in Byzantine times. Christianity starts out as kind of an outlaw movement, but when the Roman Empire embraces Christianity in the 4th century, they become the establishment. And there are people who don't want to be the establishment. And so they leave places like Jerusalem or Caesarea. And where do you go? You go out to the desert. Okay? And the Judean desert is the place that they go. And it becomes such a popular thing to do that, ironically, at a certain point, there's more traffic out in the desert than in the cities. There are 50 monasteries at the height of the monastic movement in the Judean desert. It's really astounding. Some of them exist today only in archaeology. Some of them still have monks living in them, or actually are renewed, right? They don't still. Some of them are in very inaccessible places, like this Marsaba here on the edge of the cliff. Some of them were on main roads, okay, like the Avtimus Monastery, which was on the main Jericho-Jerusalem road, and travelers were encouraged to stay there for the night and to give a contribution to the monastery. Okay, what did they do about water? So this is what we talked before about the flash floods and being able to harness that power of water. So in the picture on the right here, this is the incredible water system in the Avtimus, or the Euthemius, really is what it's called, monastery, which today is on the edge of Mishora Dumim. They built this massive, massive cistern, not necessarily filled every year. But if you're going to have a rainy year and you're going to have good flash floods, you don't want to waste any of that water. You want it to fill up. So today that's been excavated and you can go see it. Other monasteries were lucky enough to live near water. Right? And this is the Faran monastery on the left here, in Wadi Kelt, which is right near Ain Prat, which is right near the water. Okay, we're going to finish up with the idea of the desert as a metaphor. Okay, so one of the very interesting questions that you could ask is, we have a holy place, it's Jerusalem. Why do we get the Torah in the desert? Not the Judean desert, Mount Sinai, right? In the Sinai desert. This is one of the places that is suggested to be Mount Sinai. And the rabbis, of course, have a field day with that question. They love that question. And we have so many answers that are given. So I brought you a nice selection here. We'll go through them quickly, right? The Gemara and Nadarim, right? Doing a little drash on the psukim in Bamidbar, right? When a person renders himself like a wilderness, right? Like a midbar, deserted before all, the Torah is given to him as a matana. So you have to you have to empty yourself. You have to make yourself open to everything, and then you'll get the Torah as a gift. Okay. The other source here, Bamidbar Rabbah, right? Three things. The Torah was given with three things: with fire, with water, with wilderness, with midbar. Why? Okay, look down here at the third to last line. Why? Just as these are free to all who come into the world, so too the words of Torah are free. So you have to make yourself open. The Torah is free to everyone. Okay? All the gifts that were given from God to Israel are from the Midbar, right? The Torah, the Mishkan, the Sanhedrin, etc. Right? And then finally, the Yalkut Shimoni, this beautiful idea: just as the wilderness, the Midbar, has no end, so too the Torah has no end. So this idea of openness, of freedom, of getting rid of your preconceptions, of infinity, all of those things are connected to the Midbar, but they are also connected to the Torah. From the beginning of Am Yisrael's history, the desert was a place to get away from civilization. The patriarchs and the matriarchs go to the desert because they want to get away from the noise of civilization of Mesopotamia and the older cultures. They want to create something new. Okay. Later, like we said, we have our 40 years in the desert. We have a nostalgia for that time. But the desert is also it's a place of danger, but it's also the place where our leadership is cultivated, right? And they learn how to become leaders. And we talked about this already before, but I brought you, of course, the famous Mizmor David. David is perhaps the best example of a leader who grows up in the desert, and he takes the lessons from the desert into his leadership. And this Mizmor is perfect, right? Mizmor David, Adonai ro'i lo echsar. God is a shepherd. Bin odeshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yinaleni. He's going to bring me to places of grass. The picture here is a picture of the desert, the Judean desert in the winter. Okay, you can have Neotesha in the desert, but the desert can also be a very dangerous place. Gam ke'elech b'gates hamavet lo yirara ki atayim adi. I'm not going to be worried in that gates hamavet, right? That another synonym for midbar, because God is with me. So the desert is this place that is a place where you can grow closer to God, where you can look for God, and you can find Him, partly because it's such a dangerous place. Okay? The Nevi'im look with nostalgia back at the time when we were in the desert. Okay, the most famous one, of course, is Yirmiyahu. Haloch v'karata b'oznei Yerushalayim k'amar Hashem zacharti lach chesed nulraich avat klulotayich. I remember your love as a bride. Lechtech acharai b'midbar be'eretz lo zruah, in a land that was not sown. You followed me, God says. You followed me even though you didn't know what it was going to be like. So this is kind of this honeymoon period. It's remembered as this perfect time where we didn't need very much, right? When David HaMelech says he wants to build a mikdash, God says, I didn't have a mikdash in the desert. I just had a tent. That's all I needed. And when we want to come back to Hashem, right? What Hosea says, we gone astray. How are we going to come back? Okay. He says he's going to take that wife that went astray, and I'm going to bring her holachtia hamidbar v'dibarti eliba. If I can bring her back to the desert, maybe she'll return to me. Okay, what's Menachem Begin doing here? Menachem Begin kissing the hand of Aliza Begin, which is a beautiful picture, unfortunately a little bit cut off. This is Menachem Begin as he won election in 1977 after 29 years in the opposition. And the first person he thanked was his wife, Aliza, who he said, right, Menachem Begin knew his Tanakh backwards and forwards, Zacharti lachesed neuraych avak klulotayich lechtech acharai bamidbar, but then he ended it differently, be'eretz zruat mokshim, in a land filled with mines, right, mines from his enemies. So that's Menachem Begin. Okay, finally, we come into Eretz Yisrael. And we kind of stop being the people of the desert, right? We talked about this in the very first class about a land of milk and honey, right? We become farmers. We don't want to have the desert anymore. We want to have the farming. We have a conflict between farmers and shepherds, farmers and nomads. It's the active life versus the contemplative life. Do we want to get rid of the desert? And there certainly is that image alongside that image of Hosea. Let's go back to the desert. We have this image from Yeshayahu that, first of all, we said he's going to Yasem Midbar Ke'eden. We're going to make the Midbar into a Gan Eden. But here we have Etain Bamidbar Eretz, Shita V'Hadas Ve'et Shamen Asim Ba'arava Brosh Tidhar V'Tashur Yachdav. I will plant in the wilderness the cedar, the shita tree, the myrtle, the oil tree, the cypress, the maple, the box tree. I'm going to get rid of that desert. We're going to plant it all. And of course, who is the great visionary of that idea? David Ben Gurion. We're going to settle the desert. We're going to make the desert bloom. We're going to make it green. And Israel has done that so much, right? And we have so many methods of irrigation. This is a picture from the Volcani Institute of Research and Development in the desert. And we really have figured out how to do that. But the question I will leave you with is, maybe we want a little bit of desert. Maybe we need a little bit of desert. Maybe we need sometimes to get away from all those voices in civilization and to be able to go back to hearing that one voice. And Yirmiyahu expresses it. He expresses it as a disappointment, but I think it can also be a hope. Mi itneni b'midbar milon orchim. Oh, that I were in the wilderness, in a lodging place of wayfaring men. I want to go away. I want to leave everything. And I want to just be able to connect to God and to everything around me. Let's see, lots of comments. I saw the Eskimos are Inuits, but let's see what else there is here. Okay, I will correct the title. Tzalmavet we saw. Source sheets. Yadber. Yadber, does it mean to rule over? Yadber.
Further down,
right. Right. It's an unclear pasuk, by the way. It's not such a great pasuk, but it seems to be having something to do with sheep and shepherding. Okay.
Sound asleep.
What? Yadber Sonenu. Thank you. Yadber Sonenu. Very nice. I didn't think of that, but that's very good. Grayish as opposed to bright green leaves. I don't know if that's connected to conserving energy, but maybe. Lots of blood vessels in the ear. Yeah, that's part of I think the being able to cool themselves. Did the east side of Masada go right to the war? Yeah, we actually have fascinating graffiti in Masada that was found by archaeologists that shows a boat. Somebody drew a boat, and it seems that it was accessible only by ship. Right, not completely right. You do have the Roman encampments, but it was very, very close to the water. Okay, and anything else? I live in Midbar Yehuda. It is beautiful. It's true. Yeah, and we do need some desert. We definitely need some desert today. Okay, thank you, everyone. Bisorot tovot me'od. We should have a good, quiet end of the week. And thank you. I don't think that Rabbi Kalman is coming on, and I don't know any of the coming attractions, so I will not be saying them.
Shulie, I thought.
Thank you.
Yes.
Shulie, I thought Vayedaber Hashem El Moshe is because Hashem Ro'i. Vayedaber is taking.
Vayedaber is speech. Again, we said speech connected to leadership.
It's
But
like
is it because, is that what the root comes from? That's interesting. I don't know. It would make sense with all these other roots we were talking about.
Julie,
So,
I have
yeah,
a story about the Afikim. So I'm sorry about there's noise outside my apartment. I don't
that's
know-
okay.
Yeah. I took Tehillim, a course in Tehillim with Nechama Leibovich 50 years ago. And
Okay.
over Psalm 126, she explained the Afikim to us. And then she talked about some anti-Semitic purported Christian scholar who talked about how Yeshua is impossible for Israel, as if there could ever be water in.
Afikim Banegev.
And she said, the Hanes Habilti Efshari Hazeh Kore Lanu Kol Shana V'Shana Ba'aretz.
Kol hakavod. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm always strengthened by giving this class. A pleasure to see you all.
Thank you, Shulie. You give us
Thank
strength too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Good night, wherever you are.
Be
Thank you.
well.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.